All right, Mandy asked a question. She says, I'm starting ground zero with spell to write and read, but with a 6-year-old who went to kindergarten last year. We've been starting with the cursive first and have gotten through the numbers. Should I move to phonograms and then spelling lists? Okay, so in order to answer Mandy's question, what I want to do is I'm going to take you into the Spell to Write and Read book so that you can get an idea of how to move through the material for yourself. All right, I am going to answer your question, but I want to show you where you can get that answer. So I'm going to go to the inside front cover, and this is what's called the scope and sequence. So basically, these are the 40 steps that you would be teaching, and this will take you to actually do all of this and to teach all the way through the 2,000 words in the Wise Guide. It takes you 4 to 6 years if you're starting with a kindergartner from the very beginning. So if I were to start with a kindergartner and work and stay consistent and stay with it and go all the way to the end of 5th grade, then I would have taught through all of this. Now, I'm going to get to that step before the end of 5th grade, but we cycle back through this over and over. So I'm not going to go into all of that right now, but this is my scope and sequence, and this gives me instruction as to how to progress through the material that I need to cover. So the first thing I want you to notice is the very first thing up here. It says, and I can put it up here, but you can also just look at your book, and it says before starting the Wise Guide. So there's 11 steps that you want to go through before you ever get to the spelling lists. So your question is, should I move to phonograms and then the spelling list? Well, yes. Teaching penmanship is right here. Okay, teaching the penmanship is step 6, and teaching the phonograms, which, by the way, with a beginning student, you said you have a 1st grader. I don't know if you did. You said you're starting from the very beginning with spell to write and read. So I'm assuming that your kindergartner did not get this last year. I don't know because you didn't tell me. So we're going to assume he did not get spell to write and read in kindergarten. Okay, but you're starting this year, so now we have a 1st grader. I'm assuming also that your kindergartner had some penmanship instruction. Okay, whether that was cursive, I don't know if you're doing cursive, if you want to do cursive, I don't know. So I'm just going to kind of answer all of the above. All right, so basically I go through these, and let's take a look at them. First one is plan before teaching. Now, we would say, okay, well, I sat down, I looked at my materials, and I got all the materials I need. Okay, done. No, that's a keep going. Every week I want to be planning. What am I going to be doing for my lessons and that kind of thing. And I just did a series on my Facebook page. I think yesterday was the last post for that series on lesson planning tips. So go back and look at those. So planning is an ongoing step. Okay, then read aloud. No, sorry. Prep the senses. This is phonemic awareness. So this is a really important step for everybody. Everybody. And so your 1st grader, if your 1st grader is up and reading, chances are this is fine, but you still want to take a look at this and assess, does your student have phonemic awareness? Because if not, that is something really important that you're going to need to work on before you ever get to the spelling lists. So make sure that you don't skip over that step. Read aloud. So you want to get some kind of read aloud program going, making sure that as much as you can, if you can, on a daily basis, you're reading to your kids. Okay, evaluate. Now, I'm going to talk more. Let me come back to that one because there's another question that I'm going to get to that addresses evaluation. So I'm going to come back to that one. So steps 5 and 6, when I'm working with a beginning student, kindergarten, 1st grade, okay, when I'm working with a student that's just starting, they're learning the phonograms. I don't know if your student learned the SWR phonograms last year. I don't know. But I'm assuming they didn't. Maybe they learned, A says ah, or something like that. So I'm assuming you're teaching the A through Z phonograms for the first time to that student. So for that student, either kindergarten, 1st grade, they're getting their penmanship up and going. Maybe they learned manuscript last year, and this year you want to transition to cursive. Okay, that's a student that we're talking about penmanship. So steps 5 and 6. 5 is introducing the phonograms. And that's more of like a how do you teach phonograms, make sure you're not doing letter names, you're doing phonogram lingo, why do we teach this way, that kind of thing. That's what step 5 is about. It's kind of an instruction for you to give you background. So steps 5 and 6 for that beginning student are taught together. Go back and watch the video that I just mentioned in the videos on my Facebook page called Teaching Penmanship, and go see how I do that. So 5 and 6 actually go together, and 6, if you'll notice, says A through Z phonograms. So when I'm first starting, all I'm doing is teaching the alphabet, and I'm teaching the phonogram sounds, and I'm teaching how to write them. Okay, so those go together. Now, with the cursive first, the way it is currently, I have you start with numerals. And I did that because before you ever get into the very first phonogram, the a, ah, you need to have the clock face stroke firmly established. And we do that by teaching the numeral 0. And so it says you've taught the numerals. That's great. Now, which was actually step 7. So and that's okay. That's the way I had it laid out in the cursive first. So now you want to go back and you're going to teach steps 5 and 6. You're going to get into the phonograms, teach the A through Z phonograms. Step 8, introduce the learning log. So far, student hasn't even seen his learning log, or maybe you just got him all excited about it, but you're doing the foundation. Remember I talked about the foundation. Penmanship is a foundation. It's a huge step. And a lot of times we're like, well, you know, can I just get going? I saw there's a support group for on Facebook for spell to write and read. And I remember recently somebody said, well, do I really have to spend all this time with penmanship? Yeah, because in order to teach the spelling, the student has to be writing. The writing is an integral part of it because we're trying to use the multisensory approach. The student writes his way into learning how to read. So the spelling and the writing go together. It's critical. And so yes, you want to spend that time. So we introduce the learning log, and then we're going to teach a reference page. Get that started. Notice step 10, you'll start to introduce the multi-letter phonograms. There's only, with a first grader, there's just 5 multi-letter phonograms you teach with the first list. And boom, there is a step 11 that goes together with step 4. So when I talk about evaluation in just a moment, I'll come back to that. But step 10, and then boom, we're into the spelling list. So to answer your question, that was a long, kind of like, I went through all that, but I want you to see the instructions are right there for you. So you're at step 7. You now need to go back and teach the penmanship and the A through Z phonograms. Steps 5 and 6 go together for that, and then you'll be able to continue progressing through this. All right, so that's what your scope and sequence is. The cursive first, let's go back to this scope and sequence. The cursive first program for you, it addresses steps 5, 6, 7, and 10. So as you're teaching the cursive first, that's what it's helping you do. It's teaching steps 5, 6, 7, and 10. Okay? So that's how cursive first goes together with your scope and sequence. You will know that your student is ready to move into step 8, which is getting the learning log up and going, it's like a 3-minute activity. But step 9 is the consonant vowel page, and you'll know that, and then you get into the spelling list. And you're ready to do that when a student is able to write the phonograms without a visual model, just by hearing you say the phonogram. So if you, and some students, that's on the whiteboard, that they're not ready for even paper pencil. That's okay. You can get into the spelling list. They're not obviously doing it in their learning log, but they can actually get into the spelling list before they've got the fine motor down. But your student has to be able to keep up with you. So if you say, I'm going to give you some sounds and I want you to connect them. If you're doing cursive, they're connected, and I want you to keep up with me. So it's k, a, t, cat. Can you write that? And they write k, a, t. They're ready to move into spelling. Okay? So they need to be able to keep up with you. Again, without the visual model, just hearing those sounds. So if you look at Spell to Write and Read, page 40. Page 40, that is part of the step 6. That's part of the instructions for saying and writing the phonograms. And Wanda explains for you right here the 2 different ways that you need to be practicing the phonograms, and you want to do that every day, both directions. You have to read the cards, but also listen to the teacher say the sounds and practice writing them. And if you're forgetting that second step, you're going to have a hard time when you try to go spell, because they're going to go, I don't know what you're talking about, because they haven't practiced that. So you need to look at page 40. That's in step 6. That's the teaching about how to review the phonograms. Make sure you cover that. Okay, so Mandy also asked the question, I'm doing it with a 4-year-old as well. Should I let him go at his own pace as it is slower than the 6-year-old? Yeah, a 4-year-old, unless you have a boy that's 6-year-old and a girl that's 4 and she's ready and he's kind of getting ready, then maybe you could teach them together. But chances are your 6-year-old, especially if the 6-year-old had penmanship instruction, whatever it was last year, then the 6-year-old is probably just way ahead of where the 4-year-old is going to be. And so your 4-year-old is going to need a lot more time on penmanship than the 6-year-old. So I would, there's things that they could be doing together, but you know, if we're going to practice out on the sidewalk with chalk, then sure, they can do it together. You, hey, here, write this phonogram. Here, you, write this one. You know, they could be working on different phonograms. They could be doing it together, but they're doing it, you know, separately, but together. I hope that makes sense. Okay, and then, so I'm assuming, like I said, I'm assuming that your 6-year-old had penmanship instruction last year, and so the 6-year-old is going to be able to move more quickly through the penmanship this year than if there had been no instruction last year. Okay.